Hey there and welcome back to Northwest Craftsman. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're already a subscriber, thank you guys for joining again. Today, I'm going to be bringing back to life an old bandsaw that I got from a friend because it's a tool that I don't have around the shop recently, and he gave it to me for free. It just required a couple of parts. So what we're going to be doing today is restoring this from a non-working state all the way back, and I'm not going to bring it all the way back to like professional brand new state, but I'm going to bring it right back up to where I need so I can start using it around the shop. All right, let's take a look. So this guy is an old Craftsman King Seeley, which was made probably sometime in the 1950s. And these things are known to just be absolute workhorses. I'll get a quick zoom in on the serial number for you guys so that if you're looking at one of these, you can see what model number it is exactly. There you go. Okay, so pretty basic setup like most bandsaws have. It's just got a lot going on with it. Definitely need to do something with the cast iron top. We'll pop open the inside and see what it looks like. I don't know what the tire condition is like, and you can see that the guard itself got pretty beat up. I think it probably ran into the blade at one point, so we'll go ahead and take a look to see how everything's aligned and get this guy back up and running. Oh, and I also got a mounting base that came with it. It has the original Craftsman electric motor on there, and I've heard these guys are really nice because they actually have an electric or a thermal fuse reset that you can push right here, but it didn't come with a belt. Everything's a little bit dusty, but this guy should be good to mount it on. We'll see if it's stable enough for the work that I'm looking to do. I may need to mount it onto something a little bit more substantial. So I'll need to go ahead and vacuum this guy out, and as I was looking at this, definitely need to replace the blade, definitely need to replace the tires. Well, I mean, there's not even any tires here, and actually it looks like somebody ran it, get it to zoom in, looks like somebody ran it without the tires on there for a while, which is why there's this big wear spot right here. So I'll go ahead and take a look at that. We'll need to go ahead and take a look at each one of the different adjustment knobs to make sure that everything's make sure that everything is well lubricated and make sure that everything's working the way that we expect it to. Otherwise, not really in all that bad shape. Let's go ahead and get this guy vacuumed up and we'll see what she looks like after that. Well, it's amazing what a little bit of vacuuming will do to clean things up a little bit and bring it back. The paint is actually not in that bad of shape, not as bad as I was expecting. But you can see after vacuuming this cast iron top off how bad a shape it's in. And I did notice that the fastener down here is missing for the split, keeping the split stable. So the primary things that I'm going to need to do are go ahead and replace the blade, put tires on, and then I've got a belt that I'm going to be able to put between the motor and on the other side of here to drive it, and then some fasteners to put the base to the bandsaw itself. And then one thing I can't forget is I did get some new blade guides for up here and down beneath because these ones look like they're pretty shot. There we go, so new tires installed. That was actually not as difficult as I expected it to be. I found it easiest to use some zip ties to hold it in place until it kind of became taut, and then just use my hands to work it in all the way around. My thumbs were strong enough that I could just lift it up and over and then just use my left hand to keep everything clamped in place as I was moving around. Though one thing I am noticing is on Amazon this said that it was good for this particular model, but if you look at it you can see that it kind of walks around on the inside of that groove, which means that the belt or the tire is a little bit small. So we'll see if that's an issue as I'm getting things set up. But overall, urethane tire installation went pretty smoothly. So back in the day, and one of the things that you can still do for your guide blocks is use something like brass, which is a soft and self-lubricating metal. That's what it looks like they used in this old one. Nowadays, one of the things you can do is get a composite, and so Olson, let me get the full name in a second. Olson is actually the full name. So Olson cool blocks are a composite that you can use to guide it, and it helps to keep it cooler because it won't heat up nearly as quickly. And there's a couple different things you can use. Realistically, what you want to try and do is keep the heat low on your blade if you're cutting a pretty heavy cut. And you also want to make sure it stays lubricated, which is a part of that staying cool. I've also heard that you can use some ironwood, which is a self-lubricating wood. But go ahead and go online and you can do that. But I'm going to use the Olson cool blocks for this, and I just need to trim it down because you can see that these guys are round, and I couldn't quite find the ones that were intended for this one. So what I'm going to do is just trim these down all the way around, ensuring that I keep getting a flat face right here, but make sure that it fits in to the same size hole. Trim it down just a little bit. Okay, so lessons learned. Getting the Olson blocks, the Olson cool blocks, which were not necessarily intended for this bandsaw, led to a lot of work trying to get these guys to the right size. Get the guy in focus. Led to a lot of work trying to get these guys the right shape, although I did end up getting it in the end. I started off with a chisel just trying to cut the corners, and then I moved over to sanding by hand, just rubbing it back and forth. And then, given that it's hard to get a round shape doing that, I ended up just chucking it up into my drill and used it as a little tiny sanding lathe, which was really nice. But the thing that I think I learned from this is definitely go through and try to get the right thing to start with. And frankly, if I was to go back and do this, I don't know if these cool blocks are worth the difference between just getting a brass rod that's the correct diameter. So I'm going to go ahead and probably just recommend that if you can't find the cool blocks that are the right size, because it was kind of a pain to get these down to the right size. But in the end, got it all right. So let's go ahead and get these guys mounted in. So now that I've got the blade guides all the way around, you can see the top set and the bottom set right down here. What I'm going to need to do is go ahead and put the new blade in, because I want these guys to sit on just on either side of the blade, and I can't figure that out until I put them in. And then I may also need to adjust my thrust bearings a little bit to make sure that it's sitting in the right spot. I'll go ahead and install this, and then I'll point out what I'm doing to adjust it in the end. So the couple of different adjustments that I want to make on here are to make sure that the blade is lined up in the center so it rides right on the crown of this tire and wheel. And then same thing down here. And I've noticed that on the top, it looks like it's coming around just fine and staying pretty stable. However, down here on the bottom, the blade is sitting pretty far towards the front of this, and you can also see with how it is close to the thrust bearings right here is that there's still a little space to go back towards it. I'm going to try and tweak around with that a little bit and see if I can get anything to sit more solidly on that. But if you're looking for the adjustment, the way that you adjust that almost all bandsaws is this guy right here, and it's a tilt. And so as you bring this guy in and out, it's going to cause the wheel to sit one direction or the other, which causes the blade to ride in a certain spot on the wheel. And ideally, once you get this one lined up, it'll push this bottom one into place. So we'll go ahead and see how that works, but otherwise it looks good here. And then you've got your tension knob right up here to put tension on it. So once I got it to ride on it, I brought it all in and got it under tension, and I still need to figure out how exactly to get that perfect. But I've heard once you can start hearing it play music, you should be good to go. So we'll give that a shot. When you're adjusting your guide blocks, one of the things that, or guide bearings if you have a newer one, one of the things that you want to look at is you do not want this guy to sit more than the crest or any further forward than the crest of your blade, and that is because if it gets too much further forward, you'll start cutting into it. And so when you're adjusting it, let me get a better angle on this. When you're adjusting it, what you want to do is make sure that this guy, as you poke him in, is going to sit just behind where the teeth are cutting, but you also don't want it to be touching with too much force. You want it literally just to be barely off, like a 32nd or a 64th off, because it's only meant to be there to keep the blade consistent so that it doesn't, when you're cutting, wobble back and forth in this direction. However, you don't want it sitting on there the whole time, otherwise you're going to cause a lot of unnecessary friction. So what I'm going to do is, while my set screws are loose on both the top and the bottom, I'm going to scooch these guys in and spin it around and make sure that I don't have any touching, but that if I put any lateral pressure on this at all, they start to touch and help to keep it straight. And then one last thing that I wanted to do before I go ahead and mount this onto the stand and get it hooked up to the motor is make sure that I don't hear any rubbing on this case part right here from the inside. So I'm just going to reach around to the pulley right here and then take a careful listen. And the only rubbing that I can hear is the periodic rubbing on that blade guide. You can hear it kind of coming in and out. Otherwise, that looks good. Something I forgot about is, so there's 3 mounting screws on this guy, 1 in the back, 2 in the front on either side. The 2 in the front are on the outside. This one is actually underneath this case part, so I'm going to pop this back off real fast so that I can put it in. So the last step is to get the belt from the electric motor up to the pulley wheel, and then we should be good to test it. One other thing to note before I get started is you've got a couple of different options when it comes to belts. One is a more traditional style belt here, but you've also got the interlocking link style belt. The reason I chose to go with a traditional belt is that it was like 1/5 or 1/10 the price. You're looking at something like $3 to $4 for this, and you're looking at $30 to $40 for the linkable belts. I have heard that they run a lot more quietly. And the nice thing is if you get one bad link, you can always just relink it with the extras that you have on hand, and you can use it for a variety of applications, and you don't need to get it sized exactly for your application. But I went ahead and chose this because it was cheaper, and we'll go ahead and see how well it works. Now that we've got everything put away, we're going to want to go ahead and test this. Now, when you're first testing a tool after a lot of work like this, you're going to want to try and do it safely. So first, guarantee that you're in the off position before you plug it in. But then when we do plug it in, we're only going to do a quick flip to on, then off. And do that immediately, because if anything's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong quickly. And if you're already in the process of shutting things down, that is as fast as possible to get things shut down. So let's go ahead and give that a shot and see how it looks. There we go, a successful initial test. It is a bit wobbly and it looks like something maybe a little bit out of balance. I'll need to check to see if it's one of the wheels or the belt or something else that's kind of pulling on it funny, because it does wobble around. There's also going to need to be some fine tuning of those blade guides that I had in here, because I could hear it rubbing a little bit more now that we got everything secure, which isn't a total surprise because we got everything locked down, and so it may have shifted the frame a little bit, but I'll go ahead and get those guys adjusted later. Let's go ahead and test this on a piece of wood and see how it works. Not bad at all. The cut itself looks pretty good. I was able to get some curve in there, and one of the other things to check is how much blade wandering you have, which it looks like it's kind of hard to tell on this curvy cut right here, but it doesn't look like I've got a lot of blade wandering, so that looks like it should be pretty good. Go ahead and try and take a thicker pass on this guy right here, see if the blade wanders underneath it, but otherwise, I think we may be good to go. Alrighty, so here's the cut, and that is pretty darn straight. It looks like my table may be off a little bit because I don't get a lot of wobble off of it, but it does look like it is set at just at an ever so slight angle. The last thing I'm going to need to do is finish this rusty old tabletop right here. I'm going to go ahead and do that in a separate video though, because there's a bunch of different ways that you can remove the rust. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't tear this guy down and get him finished up, and then we'll apply a nice layer of paste wax so that it's a little bit more smooth. I could totally feel the resistance as I was trying to cut it on these different pieces. Well guys, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I had a ton of fun bringing this bandsaw back to life, and it's going to be really helpful for me in the future as I'm trying to cut a bunch of my lumber down to dimensional sizes and just save some of my lumber so that I can use it. And it's just nice to get a new tool in the shop. Bandsaws can be super useful. If you have any questions about what we did today, go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below and I'll make sure to get back to you. If you like the kind of content we're producing here at Northwest Craftsman, we'd really appreciate the thumbs up and a subscribe. If you'd like to be notified when future episodes come out, go ahead and click that little bell icon. And as always, thank you guys very much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.